We're going to see conversational assistants that resolve issues before they even surface. On the sales, on the customer experience front, AI is going to enable real-time tailoring of offers.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to our podcast on the business model reinvention. The topic for today is how hardware as a service is turning CapEx into smart services and how it is unlocking growth for organizations. Today, we'll explore how this shift is transforming the way organizations are acquiring, managing, and scaling their hardware equipment and devices through as a service models. I'm your host, Munish Gupta at PwC. I help our clients in transforming to new business models. I'm thrilled to have our guest, Patrick Maroney. Patrick is a principal in SAP's High Tech Industry Executive Advisory Group. Pat, welcome.
Munish, excited to be here and to share some perspectives on how this hardware as a service is reshaping all of the industrial automation, high tech, healthcare, and even life science industries.
Looking forward to this conversation. I know you and I, we've been working together for quite some time. I was going through a recent market forecast, and the number that I saw around hardware as a service was astonishing. I saw that the HaaS global market TAM was around $300 billion by 2028. And they are showing measurable impacts such as reduced lifecycle cost, increased customer retention, and feel like they are not projections. These are the proof points. So it feels like HaaS is more than a buzzword. So let's start at the core. Can you walk us through what hardware as a service really means and why we are seeing such a surge in momentum?
Yeah, absolutely. I think hardware as a service or HaaS, it's essentially a shift in business model from physically buying the items to not selling them, but delivering them as a service, similar to leasing a car versus buying a car outright. It's part of a much broader trend. Equipment as a service, device as a service. It's really an extension of software as a service. And instead of purchasing, for example, a whole robotic system or a diagnostic machine, you'd essentially subscribe to it. You could pay for usage. You pay a subscription on a regular monthly fee. You link payments to outcomes being achieved. It could be a hybrid of all of these. What I really like about this, Manish, is that effectively the model reduces capital expenditure. It moves from CapEx to an OpEx. It ensures constant access to the latest technology. A manufacturer might deploy robotic arms, for example, under a monthly subscription plan, and that might include entitlements for maintenance, specific types of upgrades, even replacement parts. And maybe the overall machine might be on a total uptime payment plan where you're only paying for the amount of service. It can vary. In med tech, for example, hospitals can adopt high-end diagnostics on imaging equipment. So you think of MRI machines or CAT scans, and that can be done on a service-based model. You can avoid all these massive upfront costs on buying the equipment, maintaining the equipment, installing the equipment, and it ensures that the most cutting-edge technology is there. So I'm really excited about this opportunity.
It is really fascinating in terms of how this will drive strategically in terms of the flexibility for the organization. One question I'm sure that is on top of the CFO and CIOs is given the economic situation we are in, how do I plan for this financially? Uh, I would like to dive into some of the revenue models and let's just talk about the flexibility that HaaS can provide. Can you just talk about those revenue or the financial models, Pat?
Yeah, absolutely, Manish. So
Yep.
there are several different financial models that make hardware as a service attractive. You could do subscription based pricing, and this is probably the most common, where there's a fixed fee paid per month. There could be pay per use works where it works really well in medtech, for example, where hospitals might only pay for each scan performed, or anywhere that you can help make costs more predictable, tie them directly to, say, volume, service volume. You can set it up as tiered pricing. This helps align costs with usage levels or service tiers. One of the most exciting and probably the scariest is this outcome-based models. They're particularly relevant in healthcare where payments could be linked to diagnostic accuracy, to the turnaround time of the diagnostics itself. There could be hybrids on, it doesn't just have to be everything. It could be some components or subscription. You can blend these elements and drive much more long-term stability. So I think the sky's the limit. What I've often seen too is when economic headwinds wind up a little turbulent, this new way of doing business models unlocks new opportunities for both the consumer as well as the producer for getting the equipment that people need but might not have the old way of financing or buying to be possible. So to me, it's the financial models make this really exciting.
Absolutely, Pat. That's a great point. And would know that these business or the revenue models just doesn't differentiate for these companies anymore. And especially in the context of AI and data and intelligence. What do you think about the impact of AI? And then, given that you represent the product company SAP here, what SAP solutions will or can play in this space, especially the industry that we are talking about, the industrial product, high tech, healthcare, and medtech? Can you double click on that one?
First of all, AI is going to play a transformational role across all industry sectors, and especially the ones that we've already hit upon here. We talked a little bit about the financial models a second ago, where customers are aligning costs with business performance, and it's helping providers with predictable recurring revenue. But all of this also fosters a foundation for continuous optimization. And this is where AI comes in, layers on top of that, and plays a much more important role. In industrial robotics, it's going to enable predictive maintenance. It's going to help identify wear and tear before the failure occurs. It could be a vibration, could be a temperature, anything that you've got sensors on, and it could even drive putting more types of sensors on equipment and therefore even taking older equipment and making older equipment more usable as well. So effectively, if you can start to sense when maintenance is needed, when there's an issue, you can actually reduce all of that unplanned downtime significantly. And that can have a direct effect on your bottom line. Giving yourself this whole thing as well gives you utilization insights. So this is going to help manufacturers actually optimize how the machines are used. And then that's going to drive improvements in efficiency and ROI. If we think about it on a med tech side, AI could perhaps analyze the scan data in real time and therefore also assist the user of the equipment in detecting anomalies. Think about providing a radiologist with suggestions and advice that makes a radiologist's job more accurate and maybe taking less time as well. This could also lead to noticing how to suggest or recommend different protocols and adjustments. So overall, diagnostic accuracy can improve. Machine learning models are really exciting. We're not talking just AI, but we're really talking about machine learning, really the old-fashioned definition of AI with the mathematical models. And that's what's used to help forecast equipment, the predictive maintenance. AI is going to help the vendors tailor hardware configurations based on the performance requirements. It's going to make much more intelligent product recommendations in terms of that configuration. And it could be a single product or a bundle of products tied together. And then we can start to align these with specific use cases. So it's a win-win for both sides of the buy-sell equation.
If I may add another view here, and especially since we are talking about hardware as a service, the agentic AI is another exciting aspect of AI innovation where we are going to see truly the operating efficiencies for the companies. It's incredible to see the impact of AI that we are already seeing with some of our clients. But none of these transformations are without hurdles. Even with the AI and the finance innovation that we had talked about, adoption is not going to happen automatically. We both have to acknowledge the reality here. In your view, just based on some of your customer interactions, what are some of the biggest challenges these companies are facing when they transition to HaaS?
So the promise is wonderful, but the reality is in the execution and how to make it happen, right? That's where the challenges lie, especially when equipment costs are high. And so you've got to be very exact with what customers are going to need and when. This is significant in all these sectors that we've talked about, whether it's robots or MRI machines. They're not cheap equipment. And so if you get the staging of all this wrong, that can be a very big financial mistake. Many hospitals, many manufacturers, they're used to owning their own assets outright. So shifting to a service model really requires a change in mindset. But there's nothing like a shift in economics and economic headwinds to drive a compelling event in the mind shift on both sides. Scaling this globally means that you're going to have to build a dependable network of service parts. If as an equipment provider, I used to sell you equipment, I used to install the equipment, I used to maintain the equipment, maybe provide consumables. I used to have 4 lines of business. And now I'm going to collapse all that into just selling you a lease. And if the equipment's not up and running, I don't get paid. I've effectively become a utility company. And that's a major challenge. For scaling this and becoming that utility, I've got to make sure that the machine is up and running all the time. That falls on the provider of the equipment. So they're going to have a dependable network of service partners, ensuring that the uptime is there and it's consistent. And if you start to get into rural clinics, where do you put the inventory? How much trunk stock inventory will you have out there to do that? If it's a sprawling manufacturing facility, think about an automotive plant, we start to get really smart on the staging of that inventory and shared resources.
Right.
For success, providers are going to need to offer seamless support. There's also going to be a lot of regulatory challenges, particularly in healthcare where compliance or patient data security is paramount. Because the other thing too, if the uptime all shifts to the provider of the equipment, we're really talking about an IoT type setting. Overcoming these barriers is going to require end-to-end encryption. This is going to require extremely strong change management practices and governance. I would say a lot of phases to how it gets implemented are going to be required. And I'm going to say that this is going to drive a lot of pilot programs.
Definitely. Look, we at PwC have been helping a lot of our clients. But before we go there, I also just want to touch upon another topic with you around the sustainability, right? As world is increasingly focusing on ESG, what are your thoughts about how HaaS will contribute or contributing to these greener operations?
I think that's an excellent subject, right? I think sustainability is a natural fit for HaaS. Why? In both robotics and medtech, providers are essentially incentivized to extend the hardware life. So through refurbishment, through reusing different components, instead of filling up landfills, you're going to see a lot of circular economy type stuff happening right there and then for the reasons I just stated. Instead of discarding old systems, parts are going to be upgraded and recycled. This is also going to change how we design. I know there are still some industries and companies that are still struggling with design for manufacturability, and the shift is going to be to design for serviceability. But this is going to significantly reduce the amount of waste. For example, a refurbished CAT scanner, this can be deployed in a developing region. This could then extend the life cycle of the use of that one single piece of equipment. And this can simultaneously increase access to healthcare in other parts of the world. In manufacturing, old robotic arms can be reconfigured for less demanding tasks. They can be stripped for reusable parts. So there's lots of examples. Providers are also going to have visibility into the usage data of the equipment, and that's going to enable their engineering to do a much better proactive job of design going forward. There's going to be a lot of resource allocation efficiencies that are driven from this as well. And as you start to see these efficiencies, there'll be other byproduct efficiencies like the reduction on energy consumption. Furthermore to this, centralized ownership is going to lead to fewer idle assets. If I'm providing equipment and I'm only making money if that equipment is working, I'm going to do everything I possibly can to make sure that equipment is being utilized. So that's going to promote the circular mindset as well. So companies that are looking to meet ESG goals, they're going to find that HaaS allows them to innovate responsibly. It's going to help them reduce their carbon footprint. And at the same time, They're going to get access to all the latest pieces of technology and cutting edge tools. So it's a win-win.
I love where we are going with this conversation because I think we are really seeing the impact in clients' top line and bottom line who are adopting these new business models.
You've seen how this is played out on the ground. I'd be curious, based on your experience helping PwC clients implement HaaS models, what highlights do you have?
Think if I just pick up more on the provider side to start this conversation, I think the companies who are succeeding in implementing these HaaS model, they have built a strong partnership within their internal teams amongst products, product offerings, planning, market, and finance, so that they know exactly how this value chain is going to work. Because as a service model, the way you recognize revenue is very different than how you used to do with the physical products. And I think one of the things that we have also seen with our clients who have been successful, they are the early adopters of these digital capabilities like remote monitoring, predictive maintenance, IoT. And not only that, they're also starting to think about what that means when they start putting the usage based model or the subscription based model. And if I just really look at the three key value outcomes that these clients are driving, if I look at the end customer, there's a cost reduction. I think customers who are adopting the HaaS model, they're often seeing a reduction in capital expenditure by up to 40%. So there's a huge benefit that they are reaping. Of course, it puts burden on the provider side of it as they have to think about their cash flows and whatnot. If I come back to the end customer side of it, we are seeing improvement of their cash reserve. If you look at the cost reduction, the cash flow improvement, that's huge because now you are moving away from time based maintenance to the condition based maintenance. And AI is starting to play a significant role in terms of what's happening. If I just look on the softer side of it, the impact of this is you basically having a much stickier customer base because now you have a predictable recurring revenue, you have a more consistent sales pipeline. What we have seen with the clients who have been successful, they are taking baby steps. They're launching the target pilots with very clear KPIs and the outcomes that they can measure. In last 12 months, we are starting to see clients looking more and more about how do they integrate AI into these models. And we've been talking about the adoption of AI, the impact of AI, and clients are asking us to come really help them define the AI strategy, integrate with these new business model, and eventually really drive the value outcomes. I think those are some of the things that we are seeing on the ground with number of our clients.
That's in line with my thinking too. We didn't really talk about that when we mentioned challenges, but as AI plays a more and more important role, the cleanliness
Yeah.
of the data, the access to the data plays a more and more important role. The context of that data that's just unstructured, where all the context of how it was collected, under what environment it was collected, if that's lost, that makes the AI role that much harder. And where people are taking baby steps, they might be in such a rush to get a baby step AI model that instead of putting in a bike with training wheels, you're buying a tricycle. Important challenge is to make sure that you've got the long-term view in mind, especially on what you need for data as the foundation, even if the immediate near-term needs are baby steps.
So let's just talk about the future. We are already seeing from hyper personalization to the autonomous operations, smart contracts, AI driven customer experience. The list is unlimited, right? And the possibilities are unlimited. So if I look at next 3 to 5 years, and given that I touched upon the market possibility of $300 billion, where do you see this HaaS market evolving and going?
I think the future of HaaS is incredibly promising. We're already starting to see hyper personalized service models where offerings are dynamically configured based on user behaviors, usage patterns, contextual data. In industrial robotics, this could mean robotic units that adapt their workflows in real time, depending on production needs. In medtech, it could be diagnostic machines that could personalize scanning parameters based on the patient's history, based on their demographics, based on their physical references. There's a lot we could talk about in terms of what's possible in the future. But as the I in AI, as the intelligence becomes more and more intelligent, we're going to see autonomous operations. And it's going to take center stage where hardware is going to be self-configurating, self-calibrating, even initiating service requests automatically.
Yeah.
Love the win-win on both sides of this equation. We're going to see conversational assistants that resolve issues before they even surface. AI is going to enable real-time tailoring of offers. You're going to see a complete change in the way that CPQ processes work. There's going to be more intelligent AI-based configurations in the product. It's going to directly connect the PLM engineering departments with their customer. And as you see the digitization of PLM, of customers across the supply chain, we're going to see digital threads take effect. This is putting more and more focus on using your technology and your technology partners strategically. Over the past 10 years, we've seen a shift to technology and technology vendors and partners being tactical, and they're going to be strategic enablers of this strategy. I see a futuristic change there. But I'll close by saying HaaS is going to become an entire intelligent ecosystem. It's going to continuously learn on itself. It's going to adapt on its own, and it's going to help deliver value at a scale that we can only imagine at this point. To me, it's really exciting to see what companies like the one that I work for, SAP, what we're doing. We're talking about revenue recognition, invoicing, different billings, different types of entitlements to different types of consumption models. It gets really complex. But what's more important is that when one part of your business sneezes, it could be a change in the way that customers are using entitlements. How does that affect the supply chain? And if we start layering in AI and we start layering in AI agents, it's going to be really important that your technology and your technology partner isn't just isolated in one little piece of the data, but has connectivity across an entire suite of areas of your business. That service and engineering and supply chain and sourcing, it's all connected. So when change does happen in one, in real time, the other part of your business is able to adjust and adapt to it. And this whole HaaS model really begins to emphasize the need for real-time data. Add to that economic headwinds and fluctuations where I might have to adjust my overall supply chain plans, even my business strategy more frequently. I'm going to be very dependent on information to advise me in making better decisions faster. And so a real-time business is going to become absolutely critical.
I'm with you, and I'm glad that you touched upon a couple of things as a part of your closing thoughts around the supply chain. Because of AI, we will become self-corrected supply chain, the smart supply chain. And I think the decision making, which has always been hard for the organizations, is something which is going to get improved with what's happening, not only by these service models, but also with the technology which is basically supporting this thing. So, Pat, this is an awesome conversation, man. As you said, I think probably we need another session just to talk about AI. I hope our listeners who are listening to this podcast have gotten some value from this, and then they will also get some action and excited about how they can go back and really think about enabling HaaS as a service or HaaS. So, thanks for your time, and look forward for our another conversation in the near future.
Thank
Thank
you,
you.
Munish. Thanks for having me here. It's been a great conversation.
Absolutely.